Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world without switches, without LED screens, without that friendly glow from your phone keeping you company in the dark. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of an old village road, the last ember of twilight slipping beneath the horizon. The night doesn't just fall, it swallows. You can't see your hands, can't see the path, and the air feels alive with every sound. A distant owl, a creak of wood, a shuffle too close for comfort, and you realize, without light, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and the local time. I want to know who's still awake with me under the same night sky. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a slow step forward. Your eyes strain against the dark. The world before electricity isn't just inconvenient, it's terrifying. There's no comforting hum of a refrigerator, no distant glow from a city skyline, just the vast, suffocating black. Every shadow becomes a living thing. And in this world, light isn't decoration, it's salvation. You can't read after sunset unless you huddle by the faint glow of a hearth. You can't cook, sew, or travel. You can't even see the face of the person whispering beside you. When the sun sets, time stops. The poor sleep early. The rich burn their fortunes just to stay awake a little longer. Gold might buy you a meal, but light, that buys you life. You wander through a medieval street now, boots crunching over cobblestone. Only the wealthiest homes have candles glowing behind small, glassless windows. For everyone else, darkness is a tax they can't afford to pay. People go missing after dusk, not because they vanished, but because no one can find them. Here's a historical fact. In 17th century London, the city actually paid link boys, teenagers who carried flaming torches, to escort citizens through dark alleys. They were human streetlights, renting out security by the minute. You hand one a coin, and he leads you, his torch spitting sparks and smoke. The smell burns your nostrils, but at least you can see where you're stepping. Of course, sometimes those same link boys were pickpockets. There's your first quirky tidbit. The lightbringers often rob the people they guided. A poetic kind of irony. You pay for safety and lose your purse in the glow you just bought. Historians still argue whether darkness itself shaped human behavior more than religion or law. Think about that. Entire moral codes, curfews, night watch patrols, even bedtime prayers were built around fear of the dark. Without candles, the line between civilization and chaos was thinner than a wick. You pass a small cottage now, and through the cracks you glimpse a single flame trembling inside. The family has saved that candle all week, rationing each flicker for moments that matter. Supper, a prayer, a story. The wax drips like molten gold. Every drop is a reminder. This tiny light costs more than they could spare. You think about your modern life, how you forget the lamp is even on. Back then, people wrote about light the way we write about love. Philosophers compared it to truth. Lovers swore by it. Parents guarded it like their children. And when it went out, hearts raced in panic. But let's be honest, you'd struggle here. You'd stumble into walls, misplace your shoes, maybe mistake a rat for your cat. The moonlight barely scratches the ground. It's no wonder candles became currency. They weren't just tools. They were symbols of control. Whoever owned light, owned the night. A whisper of wind creeps through the lane. Your candle trembles. That little flame represents millennia of human desperation, of trial and error, of people refusing to accept that night gets the final word. You tilt your head, watching the smoke curl. That faint orange glow, It's older than civilization, yet still hypnotic. You reach a village square, and for a moment, all you hear is breath, the collective inhale of a world waiting for dawn. Candles are tucked into lanterns, guarded by glass or horn panels. Each one is a miniature sun. You realize something strange. Gold doesn't keep you alive, but this flicker does. It keeps the wolves at bay. It keeps hope intact. It lets people dream past sunset. And here's the joke. If you tried to explain this to someone from the past, told them that in your time light flows from a wall at the flick of a switch, they'd either worship you or accuse you of witchcraft. Probably both. You watch a merchant passing by, his hands full of candles wrapped in waxed paper. He moves like a man carrying jewels. In some ways, he is. Those sticks of light will fetch more silver than meat or wine tonight. Because when darkness owns the world, illumination is the only true wealth. There's another curious thought historians debate: whether the invention of affordable candles directly expanded human lifespan. Think about it. Before artificial light, the day ended when the sun did. But once people could extend their waking hours, they read, planned, created. They shaped futures instead of sleeping through them. Some even argue civilization itself depends on the ability to defy the night. As you stand there, the candlelight warms your face, your eyelids growing heavy from the dance of the flame. The air smells faintly of wax and smoke. You realize this is more than a story about light. It's about obsession, ingenuity, and survival. Humanity's first luxury wasn't gold or silk. It was the right to stay awake after dark. And now, as the wind softens and the candle gutters low, you feel it. The ancient truth that to hold light is to hold power. To lose it, even for a second, is to remember just how small you are beneath the stars. You crouch closer to that dim, fragile flame, feeling its warmth lick against your knuckles. The darkness hums beyond it, patient and endless. You realize how much of history begins here, around the first controlled fire. Not a candle yet, but the ancestor of every one that would ever follow. Picture yourself thousands of years ago, crouched beside a smoldering branch in a cave, eyes wide, lungs full of smoke, heart pounding because you've just trapped lightning. You can almost hear the crackle, smell the scorched fur on whatever creature's fat you accidentally spilled into the blaze. The discovery isn't elegant. It's chaotic and loud and a little terrifying, but it's also holy. This is the moment you and your kind stop being prey and start becoming architects of time. Fire gives you warmth, protection, cooked food, and most importantly, light. You probably take light for granted now, but back then, nightfall wasn't romantic. It was the enemy. Wild animals, predators, even other humans prowled under that curtain of dark. Those who couldn't control fire slept huddled and afraid. Those who could, well, they were gods. Here's your first historical fact for tonight. The earliest evidence of human-controlled fire dates back at least 1 million years, found in the Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Charred bones, burned plant ash, all proof that our ancestors sat around fire long before cities or writing or money. And now for a strange little tidbit. Some archaeologists believe early humans even sang to their fires. The crackling rhythm and shifting colors mesmerized them, inspiring rituals that blurred survival and spirituality. Fire wasn't just practical. It was magical, hypnotic, alive. Historians still argue whether humans tamed fire through luck or obsession. Was it stumbled upon during lightning strikes? Or did someone spend years experimenting, rubbing sticks and smashing stones in sheer determination? Either way, when that first intentional spark caught, the world changed forever. You watch the flames dance higher, and suddenly, you're not in a cave anymore. You're at the dawn of civilization. Villages rise around communal hearths, each one a living heartbeat of light. Fires become gathering places, storytelling hubs, proto-internet forums for sharing gossip, myths, and the occasional how not to set your hair on fire lesson. But there's a downside. Fire is greedy. It devours wood, air, and time. It's not portable, not convenient. You can't take it to bed with you without risking death. Well, not without some truly poor decisions and a few singed eyebrows. So the question becomes, how do you tame light enough to carry it? You glance down at your small flame again, imagining it shrunken into something manageable. A torch, perhaps. Early humans figured that out next. They wrapped resinous wood in bark or moss, sometimes dipping it in animal fat. The result was crude but revolutionary. The first handheld sun. Imagine being that first person walking with a torch through the dark forest, shadows sprinting between trees, every flicker casting monsters that vanish as you approach. For the first time, light moves with you. The torch, though, is a messy companion. It drips, it smokes, it burns out fast, and it reeks. Ancient torchlight smelled like a mix of barbecue gone wrong and wet dog. You cough, wave away imaginary smoke, and laugh softly. Romantic candlelight dinners weren't quite there yet, but progress rarely smells good. The torch paved the way for controlled wicks, fibers that could soak up fat or oil and burn steadily. Slowly, humans started crafting light that didn't need constant feeding. The flicker became cleaner, brighter, more predictable. Here's where things get interesting. In Mesopotamia, around 3000 BCE, people used oil lamps made from clay. They were simple bowls filled with olive oil and a twisted flax wick. Elegant, efficient, and surprisingly modern. Imagine a tiny puddle of gold light shimmering in a palace or a humble home. That little pool of flame meant the difference between stumbling in darkness or reading, praying, weaving, living. And yet, oil was expensive. You had to crush olives, hunt whales, or press seeds. Each method time-consuming and brutal. For many, light remained a luxury. Only temples and elites could afford to burn oil through the night. The rest went to bed when the sky did. There's a theory, still debated, that the human sleep cycle evolved because of this scarcity. Without cheap, lasting light, people may have slept in two segments. First sleep, after dusk, then waking around midnight to talk, eat, or think before returning to second sleep. A schedule born from darkness itself. You blow gently on your candle, and the flame bows but refuses to die. You can't help but admire that stubbornness. Fire wants to live as much as you do. Now imagine being the ancient guardian of fire. Whole families would assign one member, often the eldest or the most trusted, to keep the hearth alive overnight. Let it die, and you need to borrow a flame from a neighbor, sometimes paying in food or favors. Light became a social currency before coins even existed. There's a warm irony in that. Before we traded gold, we traded glow. You step out of the cave now and into the cool prehistoric night. Stars scatter above, faint and distant, while your torch sputters below, close and warm. You realize something profound. You've stolen the light of the heavens and brought it to earth. That act alone may be humanity's greatest theft. You grin at the thought, whispering to yourself, "Sorry, universe, we're keeping this one." It's a joke, but also a truth. Once you've seen the world illuminated, you can't go back to blindness. The crackle fades, the torch shortens, and the smell of charred fills your lungs. You imagine those first fires dying in the distance, leaving behind smoke that curls like memory. From that smoke, thousands of generations will chase the same dream: how to capture light, control it, shape it, until one day it fits neatly into a tiny wax cylinder we call a candle. And somewhere, deep down, you feel a connection to those early humans. Because you, too, have felt comforted by a warm glow on a cold night. You, too, have stared at a flame and seen more than heat. You've seen meaning. The story of the candle doesn't start in a workshop or a palace. It starts here, with one trembling fire and a creature staring into it, thinking, this could change everything. You stand on a windswept hill now, dawn just beginning to tease the horizon, and you realize humanity didn't stop at fire. We became obsessed with making it smaller, cleaner, and more obedient. Because fire is wild, and wild things burn what they please. You, though, you want fire that behaves, fire that bends to your will. So you start experimenting. You smear animal fat on a stick, light it, and instantly regret it. The smell hits you like a punch. Imagine old gym socks dipped in bacon grease and left to age in the sun. That's your first torch. You cough, wave the smoke away, and mutter something about progress. It's messy, but it works. Light that lasts longer than would alone. You've just discovered tallow, rendered fat from cows, sheep, or whatever unfortunate creatures left over from dinner. Congratulations. You're now both inventor and accidental perfumer of nightmares. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the Bronze Age, around 3000 BCE, people across Egypt and the Mediterranean were already using animal fats as primitive candle fuel. They'd roll reeds or rushes in melted tallow, creating what historians later called rushlights. Crude, short-lived, but revolutionary. Now, for your fringe tidbit, some ancient tallow mixtures included strange additives like powdered bones, fish oil, or even crushed herbs to purify the smell. Spoiler, it didn't work. Imagine lighting your living room with eau de rotisserie. Still, desperate times, desperate recipes. You rub your hands together, watching a thick tallow candle sputter in your palm. The wick's uneven, the wax unevenly poured, but there's something mesmerizing about it. That glow feels like a heartbeat, small and steady. You realize that for most of history, this was the cutting edge of technology. Historians still argue whether the first true candles were invented independently in several regions or spread through trade. China used rolled rice paper wicks and whale fat by 200 BCE. In India, people used cinnamon tree wax long before European tallow. Meanwhile, the Romans were busy perfecting dip candles made from beef fat and reeds. Everywhere, the same dream. Light that you could carry, light that didn't betray you to the dark. You take a deep breath, trying to imagine life by tallow light. The air is thick with smoke. Everything you own smells faintly like stew. It's so dim that reading a letter feels like decoding a secret. You blink often, your eyes sting. The candle sputters, hisses, and dies halfway through dinner. That's the part people forget. Candlelight wasn't romantic for most of history. It was expensive, unreliable, and honestly a bit depressing. But it was still better than nothing. Because nothing meant blindness. You glance over your shoulder. A small town huddles below the hill. Mud huts, straw roofs, and in the wealthiest home, a handful of tallow candles burning inside horns or shells to keep out the wind. The glow flickers unevenly, making shadows crawl up the walls like restless ghosts. You notice how everyone moves slower after dark. People finish chores by dusk, whisper goodnights, and vanish into their homes. There's no nightlife, no late-night studying, no one more episode. When the candles go out, so does the day. You lean against a wooden post, and your mind drifts to the economics of light. Imagine this. A single tallow candle in medieval Europe might cost a common laborer a full day's wages. One candle for a day of work. You wouldn't light that casually. You'd pray over it before striking the match. That's when you realize something profound. Light wasn't just a commodity. It was a privilege. Every flicker was a reminder of inequality. The poor sat in darkness while the rich dined under glowing chandeliers. The phrase, living in the light, wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. And the smell, oh, the smell. You can't ignore it. People tried everything to mask it. Sprigs of lavender, burning herbs, open windows, even in winter. But nothing truly worked. If you've ever accidentally left bacon grease in a pan overnight, you've had a preview of the medieval experience. Still, humanity pushed forward. You experiment again, less fat, maybe some beeswax mixed in. The flame burns steadier, brighter. You smile. For a moment, it feels like progress smells sweet, until you realize beeswax is 10 times rarer than tallow. The candle in your hand could feed a family for a week. You laugh softly, imagining a medieval merchant yelling, "Don't burn that. It's money." And he's not wrong. In many towns, candles were literally traded for goods. A small bundle might buy cloth or bread, and some churches even accepted wax as tithe offerings. The divine light came at a divine price. Here's another thought historians debate: whether candle monopolies, church or crown controlled, helped centralize early economies. Some say light was one of the first tax luxuries, right up there with salt and grain. You can almost see it. A dusty ledger listing 5 candles, 2 sheep, and the eternal gratitude of His Majesty. But let's pause for a second. Look at that flame again. How fragile it is. One gust, one careless move, and it's gone. It's all you have to keep away the monsters, both real and imagined. You lean closer. Your reflection wavers in the molten pool around the wick. There's something deeply human about this little ritual. The tending, the guarding, the reverence. It's not just about seeing in the dark. It's about conquering fear. Every candle ever made is a small rebellion against the universe's most ancient rule. When the sun dies, so should you. And maybe that's why candles outlasted empires. They're not efficient. They're not cheap. But they're intimate. They let you hold the day a little longer. You glance toward the horizon. Smoke curls from thousands of chimneys, a million tiny lights across the land. You realize this isn't just history. It's a map of hope, flickering one wick at a time. Somewhere out there, someone's lighting a candle not just to see, but to feel safe, to feel alive, to whisper, "Not tonight, darkness." And the darkness listens and waits. The night deepens, and you find yourself drawn toward the shimmer of something golden, soft, honeyed, and far too perfect to be tallow. The air smells sweeter here, less like a butcher's apron and more like a summer field in bloom. You've wandered into ancient Egypt, where light isn't just survival, it's worship. You step into a temple courtyard carved with stories of gods and sun kings. The air hums with reverence. Every column drips with painted hieroglyphs, and at the center of it all sits a small clay lamp, burning with a steady, golden flame. You squint closer. This isn't animal fat. It's something purer, something sacred. It's oil. Egyptians didn't settle for foul-smelling tallow. They lit their nights with the liquid sunlight of olive oil, sesame, and castor. That gentle glow wasn't just practical. It was divine. Light was Ra himself, the sun god, captured in a bowl. When you light a lamp, you're not just chasing darkness away. You're inviting the divine to stay a while. Here's a historical fact to anchor you. Oil lamps have been found in Egyptian tombs dating back more than 4,000 years. Some were buried still filled with oil, meant to guide the dead through the shadowy afterlife. A light to cheat death, even underground. And here's a curious tidbit. Egyptians used scented oils not only for light, but for perfume. Some wealthy households lit lamps made of fat mixed with myrrh or frankincense, so their rooms glowed and smelled like heaven. A luxury, 2-for-1 deal. Imagine bragging about that on ancient Instagram. Hashtag mood lighting, hashtag afterlife goals. Historians still argue whether these lamps were more ceremonial than functional. Did people truly use them nightly, or were they reserved for temples and the dead? The truth is hazy, flickering like the flame itself. You drift deeper into the temple. Shadows twist on the stone walls, dancing with the flame. A priest passes by, murmuring prayers as he tends to the lamps. He moves like someone feeding gods, not just fire. Each drop of oil he pours feels like an offering, a promise. Outside, the desert night stretches forever. There's no electricity, no sound but the soft hiss of burning oil. You realize, in this world, light isn't casual. It's currency, ritual, and power all wrapped into one. The richer the oil, the closer you are to divinity. You step closer to one of the lamps. The light spills across a gold mask, its eyes hollow yet shining. You feel something eerie in that glow. The candle, or in this case, the flame, doesn't just illuminate objects, it gives them souls. You kneel beside it, mesmerized by the way it moves. Liquid light. You can see why the Egyptians believed it could guide spirits. In a world where the sun ruled life and death, to control a small sun in your hands felt like the ultimate magic trick. You glance around and spot a market scene. Merchants haggle over jars of oil as if trading gems. You overhear one man boast that his olive oil came from the Delta, pressed 3 times for purity. Another whispers about using crocodile fat. It burns brighter, though it's harder to come by. You stifle a laugh. Of course it is. Good luck asking a crocodile for a donation. And here's where it gets fascinating. The value of oil wasn't just in its use. It was in its symbolism. In Egypt, Greece, and later Rome, to anoint someone with oil was to bless them with light. Kings were illuminated quite literally, marked by sacred oil that connected them to the gods. You realize that before gold became the ultimate measure of wealth, light already held that role. Think about it. Gold's value came from how it reflected light. The richer the glow, the closer to heaven. But oil created light. That made it holier. You step out into the Egyptian dusk. The city glows softly, every window a small temple. You can hear the hum of insects, the murmur of voices carried on warm wind. Somewhere, a child holds a lamp too tightly and spills a few drops of oil. A parent scolds, not out of anger, but out of fear. That oil might have been a day's wages. You stop to think, how many lives revolve around this single resource? The farmers growing olives, the laborers pressing them, the traders hauling jars across deserts, the priests burning it all to please gods. Every flicker of flame was built on someone's sweat. Historians often debate whether this dependence on oil sparked some of the first organized economies. When something becomes that essential, when life literally dims without it, trade follows. Control the light, and you control civilization. You step away from the temple, feet sinking into warm sand, and look up. The stars stretch wider than anything you've ever seen, but they feel cold, unreachable. The lamp in your hand glows small but fierce. It's human light, fragile, temporary, but stubbornly alive. You can almost hear ancient poets murmuring about the soul being a flame, bright one moment, snuffed out the next. Maybe they weren't just being poetic. Maybe they understood something we've forgotten. You pause and smile, whispering, "Guess I'm not that different from an Egyptian after all." You, too, chase small lights in big darknesses. You, too, cling to the comfort of something glowing just close enough to see by. The oil hisses softly as it burns. The scent of frankincense drifts upward. Somewhere behind you, the temple door closes with a heavy thud. The flame flickers, then steadies again. You walk on through the night, carrying that tiny sun with you, a reminder that long before gold glittered in crowns, the real treasure was the glow that kept the dark at bay. The road ahead leads you north, where the air grows cooler and the sweetness of the Egyptian night gives way to something earthier, sharper, smoke and beeswax and wood. You find yourself standing in the middle of a medieval village, the kind where everything smells faintly of livestock and damp stone. But there's another scent in the air tonight, one both sweet and smoky, almost alive. You follow it, winding through narrow alleys until you reach the apiary. You can hear them before you see them. Bees. Thousands of them, humming like a living heartbeat. Every hive is a fortress, each one guarded by little soldiers with wings. You duck as one zips past your ear, muttering, "Relax, I'm not here to rob you." But you are in a way. Everyone here is. Because this buzzing chaos is the source of the most precious light in Europe. Beeswax. You crouch near a wooden box where a beekeeper is gently prying open a honeycomb. He looks like a sorcerer wrapped in smoke and burlap. He's not here for the honey. That's just a bonus. What he wants is the wax, the golden substance that burns without the foul stench of tallow, the material that makes light smell like summer and holiness rather than death. Here's your historical fact. By the early Middle Ages, beeswax candles were reserved almost entirely for churches and the wealthy. They burned longer, cleaner, and more beautifully than tallow ones. The church considered them sacred, symbolizing purity because they came from virgin bees. Yes, that was actually believed. And here's your quirky tidbit. Beekeepers often prayed before harvesting, not just out of reverence, but superstition. Some even whispered that bees could understand Latin. Imagine a monk sweet-talking insects with Ave Maria just to get a bit of wax. Historians still argue whether beeswax scarcity was natural or manufactured. Did the church restrict its use to maintain its spiritual monopoly on light? Or was it genuinely too expensive for common people to afford? Either way, if you were poor, you'd never touch a beeswax candle unless you were polishing it for someone else. You step closer to the wax melting pot. The heat radiates upward, smelling faintly of honey and smoke. The beekeeper schemes impurities from the surface, his hand steady, reverent. He pours the golden liquid into molds made of clay. You watch as it cools, turning from translucent amber to soft, buttery yellow. It's mesmerizing. Each one of these candles will fetch more than a farmhand earns in a week. You'll one up. It feels heavier than you expect, smoother, almost silken. When lit, it burns with a steady, gentle flame. No sputter, no smoke, no greasy residue. This isn't just light. This is luxury. You step into a nearby cathedral, drawn by a chorus of low chants echoing from within. The air changes. It's cooler, heavier, scented with stone and incense. Hundreds of beeswax candles flicker along the altar, casting gold across marble saints. Their flames ripple in rhythm with the choir, making it look like the statues themselves are breathing. You pause, realizing you're standing in the very heart of power. The church's light isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Those candles represent access, privilege, and control. The poor may pray in the dark, but the clergy glow in divine illumination. A priest glides past you, robes sweeping the floor, and adjusts a candelabrum. He doesn't look twice at the candles. He's surrounded by them daily. But you can't stop staring. The light feels alive, somehow holy. You wonder how many lives were spent making this moment possible. The beekeepers risking stings, the traders hauling wax across kingdoms, the peasants who'd never see such brightness in their homes. The choir rises, and the flicker of the flames catches in your eyes. It's hypnotic. You think about how something so small could be so expensive, so desired. Candles weren't just tools, they were statements. To own beeswax was to proclaim, I have conquered the night. You step outside again, blinking at the contrast. The village beyond the cathedral walls is almost pitch black. Only faint glimmers of tallow lamps mark where the poor are still awake. You realize how cruel the contrast must have felt, the divide between golden light and greasy gloom. You laugh softly, a tired sound. If God's light cost this much, you whisper, he must be running a pretty exclusive club. The joke echoes, a flicker of modern sarcasm breaking through the medieval solemnity. Still, you can't help but admire the craftsmanship. Candle making wasn't simple. It took patience, precision, and a tolerance for burns that would make most people quit by lunchtime. Workers had to dip each wick by hand, layer after layer, sometimes hundreds of times, until the candle reached the perfect thickness. And beeswax, it melted slower than tallow, meaning you had to heat it carefully, or you'd ruin the batch. You pick up a finished candle from a stall, tracing the spiral pattern left by the dipping. It's perfect. No cracks, no bubbles. The chandler eyes you suspiciously, muttering about theft. You hand it back quickly, murmuring, just admiring the craftsmanship. He grunts, unimpressed. In a world where candles are worth silver, admiration doesn't pay the rent. Here's another strange twist. Some monarchs and bishops issued laws regulating when and where candles could be used. Too much light was seen as wasteful, even sinful. Imagine your local priest scolding you for lighting 2 candles instead of 1. That's prime, my son. Save the wax for God. You walk on, night stretching like ink across the countryside. Every so often, a glimmer appears in the distance. A manor window glowing faintly, or a roadside chapel pulsing with holy warmth. But between those islands of light, the world remains vast and starless. You start to understand why candles were worth more than gold. Gold could adorn a crown, but candles could push back the dark itself. Gold glittered by day, but candles made the night human. You stop at the edge of a field, watching fireflies drift like sparks above the grass. For a moment, it feels like nature mocking humanity's efforts. A million tiny candles, free and wild. You chuckle softly, thinking, if only we could bottle that. But we did. We found our way from tallow to beeswax, from grease to gold light. And somewhere in that journey, we learned that progress isn't about comfort. It's about defiance. The night hums, the bees sleep, the candles burn, and you keep walking, guided by a flame that once only gods could afford. The world around you glimmers now, not with stars, but with candlelight spilling from the windows of a great stone castle. The air smells of smoke, bread, and the faint sweetness of beeswax melting somewhere high in a chandelier. You've wandered into medieval Europe at its most opulent, and for the first time, you see what true luxury looks like. Light that doesn't smell like death. Inside the castle, servants hurry along corridors lined with torches and tall brass stands. The nobles feast in a great hall, their silver plates gleaming in the warm glow of hundreds of beeswax candles. Shadows dance across faces. Jewelry catches light like tiny suns, and laughter mingles with the hum of the flames. You stand quietly in the doorway, realizing something simple and brutal. Darkness is still everywhere, but here it has been bought off. You glance toward the far end of the table, where a nobleman idly picks wax from his ring. He's barely aware of how absurdly expensive his lighting is. Each of those candles could feed a peasant family for a week, but here they burn dozens at a time just to make dinner look dramatic. You can't help smirking. Nice ambience, you whisper, but maybe dim it down a bit, Your Grace. Here's your historical fact. During the Middle Ages, beeswax candles were a staple in royal courts and churches, while the poor were forbidden or simply unable to afford them. They were symbols of piety and wealth, and sometimes even used as payment to the church. In 14th century England, nobles were expected to donate wax for religious ceremonies to prove both faith and fortune. Now for your quirky tidbit. Monks often measured time using candles, marking lines along their length. As the wax melted past each notch, an hour was said to have passed. If a breeze blew through and melted it faster, well, time literally flew. Some prankish novices supposedly learned to speed up services by shaving the candles thinner. Historians still argue whether candles of that era were truly as rare as chroniclers claim, or whether scarcity was exaggerated to emphasize social hierarchy. Either way, if you were a peasant and you saw a beeswax candle, you knew someone important was nearby. You drift toward the chapel, where the air cools and quiets. The glow here feels different, less showy, more sacred. The scent of beeswax is thick, almost intoxicating. A line of monks kneels in prayer, their faces illuminated by 100 trembling flames. Each candle seems to breathe with them. Inhale, exhale, flicker, calm. You take a seat in the shadows, eyes adjusting to the rhythm of the light. For the first time, you notice something strange. Candlelight doesn't just reveal, it conceals. Beyond the glow, everything melts into soft uncertainty. Details blur, edges vanish. Maybe that's why it feels holy, because it leaves room for mystery. The choir begins to chant. Their voices rise like smoke, blending with the scent of honey and wax. You glance toward the altar where a massive, pure beeswax candle, the Paschal candle, burns. It's lit only on the holiest days, symbolizing Christ's resurrection and eternal light. You remember reading that some of these ceremonial candles were enormous, 6 feet tall or more. Imagine the extravagance, a single flame that could outlast seasons. The wax for one such candle might require the labor of thousands of bees. You can almost hear them, tiny wings beating in endless service. Tens of thousands of little lives condensed into one holy glow. You shake your head softly. So much for let there be light. You murmur. Seems like it comes with a body count. You step back outside the chapel, and the contrast hits you hard. The night air bites, and the castle walls swallow all sound. Beyond the stone courtyard lies the village, utter blackness. Only the faintest orange dots hint at life. Somewhere, a mother lights her last bit of tallow, careful not to let it burn too fast. Somewhere else, a thief uses the dark as his disguise. You realize that light isn't shared, it's hoarded. And in that divide between glow and shadow, entire societies take shape. The nobles dine in gold, the poor eat in gloom, and everyone believes that's just how the world works. You wander into the servants' quarters. The smell hits you immediately: grease, smoke, and sweat. A single stub of candle burns in the center of the table, its wax puddling unevenly. A maid sighs, rubbing her sore hands. Lord's banquet needs 50 new tapers by morning, she mutters. You watch her scrape drips from used candles to remold them. Recycling existed long before sustainability was fashionable. Another servant joins in, joking that they could use the leftover tallow from the kitchen. Smells the same anyway. You can't help laughing softly. Even in the Middle Ages, gallows humor was how people survived. You ask one of them quietly how much a candle costs. She snorts. More than I'll see this month. You look around. Every shadow in this room feels heavier than those in the gray hall above. Same castle, different universe. Light, it seems, doesn't trickle down easily. You make your way back to the courtyard, where a guard stands watch with a torch. The wind catches it, and sparks whirl into the sky. Expensive job, you tell him. He shrugs. Not my wax. There's something both tragic and poetic about it all. Light has become more than survival. It's a status symbol. You wonder if any of them realize how strange it is that gold, metal born of the earth, is less precious than what burns and disappears. As dawn begins to edge over the hills, the candles inside the castle are snuffed out one by one. The wax cools into pale puddles on the tables. The nobles yawn and retire. The servants gather the stubs, scraping and saving every drop. The church bells ring for morning prayers. You stand there in the growing light of day, and for a brief moment, the sun seems cheap, too easy, too generous. You've just seen how much humanity is willing to pay for light when it's scarce. You wonder what will happen the day light itself becomes abundant. But that's far in the future. For now, the bees hum in their hives, the wax hardens, and the rich continue to dine under gold while the poor whisper by smoke. You walk away slowly, the image of those cathedral candles still glowing behind your eyelids. You can almost taste the wax in the air. And somewhere deep inside, you start to understand why light became more than a need. It became a dream. You follow the faint hum of bees into the countryside. The scent of clover and wild thyme fills the air, and the low drone of wings sounds almost like chanting. You're standing beside a medieval apiary. Rows of woven straw skeps lined up like small huts. It's peaceful, beautiful even, until you realize this quiet field is actually the front line of one of history's strangest battles, the war to produce light. The beekeeper moves carefully between the hives, wrapped in layers of linen and smoke. His every motion is deliberate, patient, reverent. To steal from the bees without angering them is an art, not a trade. He reaches into one hive with slow fingers and lifts a dripping comb heavy with honey and wax. The hum grows louder, anxious like a warning. You take a cautious step back. This, you realize, isn't just agriculture, it's risk. For every pound of beeswax, thousands of bees have to visit millions of flowers. To create one candle takes weeks of labor, both human and insect. And every sting, every drop of wax carries a price. Here's your historical fact. In the Middle Ages, it could take up to 2 million flowers to produce a single pound of beeswax. No wonder the stuff was so expensive. Monasteries and estates that controlled hives often became wealthy, not because of honey, but because of wax. Now, for your quirky tidbit, some monks believed bees were holy creatures that never engaged in sin, calling them the virgins of the air. They thought killing one could curse your entire harvest. There's even a record of a medieval bishop holding a funeral for his favorite hive after a plague killed his bees. You picture him solemnly preaching to tiny coffins made of wood chips and shake your head. Humanity truly knows how to overcommit to symbolism. Historians still argue whether bee shortages were real or exaggerated by church chroniclers. Some suggest the scarcity narrative kept prices high. giving religious institutions a monopoly on light. Others think the bees simply couldn't keep up with humanity's greed. You watch as the beekeeper smokes the hives, calming the swarm, and carefully scrapes out chunks of wax. The smell is intoxicating, sweet, earthy, ancient. He melts it down in a blackened cauldron nearby, and the molten gold shimmers like sunlight liquefied. When it cools, it becomes pale and solid, ready to be turned into candles fit for a cathedral or a king. He hands you a small lump to hold. It's warm and slightly sticky, worth more than silver. That, he says with a grin, missing 2 teeth. You roll it between your fingers and feel the faint pull of history. This soft, golden lump could change lives. People have stolen for it, killed for it, prayed for it. You ask him how he protects his hives from thieves. His expression hardens. Dogs, fences, sometimes a curse or two. He laughs, but it's not entirely a joke. In some villages, stealing wax was punished like stealing gold. Candlelight wasn't just valuable, it was sacred property. You walk with him as he carries a basket of wax toward the village market. The road is narrow and muddy, lined with hedgerows. How many candles can you make with that? You ask. He shrugs. Enough to light a chapel for one night. One night. You let that sink in. All that work, all those bees, all those flowers, just to make one night less dark. You arrive at the market square, where traders shout over one another. Grain, wool, and salt exchange hands. But the wax merchant stall has a different kind of energy. Buyers lean close, whispering, inspecting the color and scent. Pure beeswax has a distinct aroma, sweet and clean. The darker, the cheaper. Adulterate it with tallow, and you'll be lucky to escape the wrath of your buyer, or the church. Because here's the thing, beeswax wasn't just about light. It was about purity. The church declared that only clean wax, untainted by animal fat, could be used on holy altars. To burn tallow in a cathedral was unthinkable, almost blasphemous. You glance toward the monastery at the edge of the village. Its bell tolls faintly, summoning the faithful. You can see the windows flicker as candles are lit for evening prayer. It's beautiful, but you can't shake the irony. Those glowing symbols of divine humility were built on one of the most lucrative industries of the age. You overhear 2 peasants near the stall. One mutters, "They say the abbey keeps more bees than people." The other scoffs, "And we still can't afford a candle for our wedding." They both laugh, but it's the tired kind of laughter that comes from knowing the joke's on them. You wander further through the market, where wax has its own economy. Some merchants specialize in collecting drippings, scrap wax, they call it. Others melt down stolen stubs and sell them as new. It's a dirty, smoky business, but a profitable one. You realize that in a world where light means power, everyone wants their slice of it, no matter how small. The sun begins to set, and you follow the beekeeper home. His hands are rough, his clothes smeared with wax and smoke. He's proud, though. His craft sustains the village, feeds his family, and, though he'd never say it aloud, gives him a strange kind of authority. After all, even kings need chandlers. You help him pour the last batch of melted wax into thin molds. The smell fills the air again, rich, golden, almost alive. He hums a hymn under his breath, something about the light of mercy. You find it oddly fitting. Each candle here is a small act of faith, not in God necessarily, but in endurance. When the final candle cools, he trims the wick, lights it, and places it on the table. The glow is perfect, steady, soft, unwavering. It throws no smoke, no shadow too harsh. Just peace. He leans back, proud. "Bees do the real work," he says quietly. I just borrow what they give. You sit in silence, watching the light flicker across his tired face. You think of the endless chain of labor it represents. The flowers, the bees, the hands that harvest, the traders who haggle, the monks who bless, the kings who buy. All of it, just to hold back the night. You blow gently, and the flame bows, then rises again. Resilient, stubborn, like humanity itself. And as you step outside, night folds around you once more, except for the faint, golden circle of light following you, carried from 1,000 hives, glowing like bottled sunshine. The soft buzz of the countryside fades behind you as you wander toward the city, toward the smoke, the chatter, the smell of markets and melted fat. The streets are narrow, slick with mud and candle wax, because this is where light itself is made, the candlemaker's quarter. It's loud, hot, and a little dangerous, and every doorway glows with the shimmer of half-finished candles cooling on racks. You're about to meet the keepers of fire, the chandlers. You duck under a wooden sign carved with a dripping candle. Inside, the air hits you like a wall, thick, greasy, humid with tallow. You wrinkle your nose. Smells like someone deep-fried a cow in here. You mutter. The chandler looks up from his workbench, unimpressed. That success you're smelling, he grumbles, ladling melted fat into a mold. Here's your historical fact. By the 13th century, candle making had become an organized trade across Europe. Chandlers joined guilds, exclusive brotherhoods that controlled who could make, sell, and even touch certain types of wax. Their recipes and techniques were guarded like royal secrets, passed down only through blood or oath. You walk between the racks of cooling candles, each one like a small pillar of bone. Some are pure beeswax, golden and smooth. Others are grayish, their surface pocked and rough from cheaper tallow. The contrast is striking. One candle is meant for the hands of nobles, the other for the hands of peasants. And now for your quirky tidbit. Many guilds required chandlers to take a wax oath, swearing never to reveal trade secrets under penalty of excommunication, or worse. In some towns, candle recipes were considered intellectual property before the concept even existed. If someone stole your method for filtering wax, you could take them to court. Historians still argue whether these restrictions actually improved candle quality or simply created monopolies. Either way, light became something only the licensed could produce, while everyone else paid for the privilege. You glance over at the chandler as he works. He moves with precision, dipping a bundle of wicks in a molten wax, lifting, cooling, and dipping again. Each cycle adds a thin layer, growing the candle slowly, dozens of dips for every finished piece. It's hypnotic. The rhythm, the shine, the faint hiss as wax meets air. He catches you staring. "Want to try?" he asks. You hesitate but nod. He hands you the wicks. You lower them into the vat, the heat biting at your face. You count slowly, 1, 2, 3, and pull them up. The dripping wax hardens in seconds, forming a pale sheath. You grin. "That's kind of beautiful." He chuckles. "And that's just the first of 50 layers." You look around the workshop, stacks of molds, buckets of lard, barrels of ashes for filtering. Nothing glamorous here, yet it's the engine of an entire economy. Candle making employs laborers, beekeepers, hunters, traders, even soldiers guarding the wax caravans. "Why so many rules?" you ask. The chandler shrugs. "People cheat. Mix dung or fish oil in with the wax to stretch it. One sniff, and your whole street smells like sin." You laugh, but you get it. In a world where light defines class, quality is everything. A candle that smokes too much or melts too fast isn't just wasteful. It's shameful. Wealthy clients expect perfection, a flame that burns steady, clean, and silent, like obedience itself. He wipes his hands on his apron and leads you to a small back room. It's darker here, quieter. Shelves of finished candles gleam like ivory tusks. These are for the palace, he says softly. Each one weighed, measured, sealed by the guild. One mistake and it's my head. You run your finger along a wax seal, an emblem pressed into the base of every candle, proof of authenticity. Even light, it seems, needs paperwork. In the corner, a young apprentice stirs a pot of cooling tallow. His face glistens with sweat. Careful, the chandler warns him. If it cools too fast, it cracks. The boy nods, exhausted but careful. You can see it in his eyes. This isn't just a job. It's initiation into a sacred order. You turn back toward the front, where the door hangs open to the street. Evening has fallen, and outside, the city glows in patches. A shop here, a tavern there, each lit by candles the chandlers made. You realize something profound. These craftspeople control the rhythm of the night. They decide when a market closes, when a sermon ends, when lovers can see each other's faces. You say it aloud, half joking. You're basically the electricity company. The chandler frowns. What's that? You smile. Never mind. You watch as he pours molten wax into tall metal molds, twisting each wick taut through the center. Why do you do it? You ask. All this heat, all this stink. He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, because it's honest. You make something from nothing, and it gives people hope. He gestures toward the window, where the flickering streetlights tremble like stars reflected on stone. That's not just fire, lad. That's comfort. The air in the workshop grows hazy with steam and the faint sweetness of beeswax melting somewhere near the back. You realize the irony. You came expecting filth and greed, but you found something else entirely. Devotion. Not the holy kind, but the human kind. The need to create something beautiful out of what's left behind. You take a slow breath. The smell doesn't seem so bad anymore. It's warm, real, alive. Before you leave, the chandler hands you a small candle, unmarked. For your journey, he says. Made with scraps, but it'll burn true. You thank him, tucking it carefully into your satchel. Outside, the sky is ink black, and the only light comes from the windows of the candle makers, glowing like pockets of defiance against the dark. You look up toward the church tower. Even from here, you can see the faint shimmer of wax light spilling from its stained glass windows. Somewhere up there, a priest is thanking God for the flame. Down here, the chandlers are the ones keeping it alive. You walk through the winding streets, the candle's faint warmth pressed against your chest, and for a moment, you feel like you're carrying something sacred. Not just light, but the memory of every hand that made it possible. The night air smells faintly of smoke and beeswax, and as you pass through the city gates, you can't help but smile. Light, you whisper, has a lot more fingerprints than people think. You leave the city behind and follow a dirt path into a cluster of cottages huddled together like cold animals. The smell of damp earth and wood smoke clings to the air. The sound of laughter, or maybe coughing, seeps through cracked shutters. And as you draw closer, you notice something. The windows are dark. No flicker, no glow. The night hears a wall. You knock gently on a wooden door, and it creaks open to reveal a woman holding a stub of candle barely longer than her thumb. The wax is uneven, the wick crooked, but the pride in her face could outshine a cathedral. She sets it on the table, and for the first time, the room reveals itself. A family of 5 sharing a meal of bread and onions, shadows crowding in around them. This, you realize, is how most people lived not in radiant halls, but in the half-light of scarcity. Here's your historical fact. Until the 17th century, an average English household spent nearly one-fifth of its income on light, whether candles, rushlights, or oil. And that still wasn't enough to brighten more than one room. People rationed illumination like food. You watch the woman trim the wick with a tiny blade. If it burns too fast, she murmurs, "It's gone before supper." Her hands move with reverence, careful and practiced. Every second of light must be earned. Now for your quirky tidbit. Some families would pinch a candle flame between wet fingers to extinguish it without wasting the wick, even teaching children the holy pinch. Others dipped their fingers in water before relighting it, a little superstition to ensure the candle forgave them for putting it out. Historians still argue whether peasants truly lived in near total darkness or if chroniclers exaggerated the gloom. But you can see it for yourself now. The fear of waste, the economy of flame. Every household had its own light schedule. Dusk to sleep, no exceptions. You sit with the family for a moment. The father eats silently, eyes fixed on the tiny flame. The children lean close, giggling softly as they trace shapes in the wax drippings. Their laughter makes the room feel warmer, though the candle is almost gone. The mother looks at you and says, "If we had one more, I'd light it, but it's better to save it for morning." She snuffs the flame between damp fingers. Instantly, the world collapses into black. You hear someone's breath catch, a chair scrape, a child whisper. It's a sound you've never truly heard before, the sound of darkness. You murmur an apology, though you're not sure why. Outside, the stars gleam above a horizon that might as well be endless. The contrast between the bright cities of the elite and this quiet void hits you like a blow. You understand now. Light isn't evenly distributed. It never was. You walk a little farther down the path, guided by the moon's pale reflection on puddles. You pass another home where a single rushlight flickers, a reed dipped in animal fat, burning smoky and fast. It lasts barely 15 minutes, maybe 20 if the wind is kind. The family huddles around it like worshippers before a relic. And yet, there's beauty here. The rough light softens faces, makes everything look almost painted. The imperfections, the soot on the ceiling, the uneven shadows, become part of the story. It's messy, but it's human. You duck into a tavern at the edge of the village. Inside, the light is a bit better, though the air smells of beer and singed tallow. A handful of men drink quietly, their faces glowing like ghosts. The barkeep wipes his hands on his apron and grins. "Candle tax," he mutters, gesturing at the lone flame on the counter. "Government says I owe M for every one I light." He's not exaggerating. In the 18th century, candle taxes were imposed in Britain and parts of Europe to control production and profit from scarcity. Candles weren't just light, they were taxable luxuries. Imagine paying extra just to see where you're walking at night. You take a seat. "What if you can't pay?" you ask. He laughs, half bitter. Then you drink in the dark. Someone strums a lute near the fire. The notes sound hollow, melancholic. You realize that for people here, darkness isn't mysterious, it's mundane. They don't fear it anymore. They've learned to live inside it, to measure their nights by memory instead of minutes. But you can't shake the image of that woman and her candle stub, the way she guarded it like treasure. You think about how much that single flame must have cost her. Maybe it was traded for eggs or milk, maybe earned by working a lord's field for a day. Light bought with sweat and sacrifice. You reach into your satchel and pull out the small candle the chandler gave you earlier. You light it and set it on the bar. The barkeep's eyes widen, then soften. "Beeswax," he says quietly. "Haven't seen that in years." The other patrons turn to watch. The glow is warmer, gentler, almost golden. It fills the corners of the room, chasing shadows from the walls. For a moment, no one speaks. They just watch the light. You notice something subtle, the way their faces change under it. The lines seem softer, the eyes brighter. You realize why beeswax candles were reserved for the wealthy. It's not just about smell or burn time. It's about how they make people look. In this light, everyone appears a little more alive. You smile, nudging the candle closer to the barkeep. "Keep it," you say. He hesitates, then nods. "You sure?" You nod again. "Seems like you could use a bit of luxury." He laughs quietly, shaking his head. "Luxury," he repeats, tasting the word like it's foreign. Then he cups his hands around the flame. "No," he says softly. "Hope." You leave before he can thank you, stepping back into the cold. The village is still dark, but one window glows brighter now, the tavern's window. A single golden square against the night. And as you walk on, you can't help thinking about how strange it is that light, of all things, could define class, power, and happiness. But that's the truth of this age. Gold sat locked in chests. Light, though, it lived in the open, touching faces, warming hearts, revealing truth. And that made it priceless. The road out of the village winds through low hills and fields of frost. But tonight, it's not the cold that chills you. It's what you hear. A bell tolls somewhere in the distance, slow and hollow. Another answers. You follow the sound, drawn toward a glow that flickers like lightning far ahead. The air smells of smoke and metal. You've arrived at a battlefield lit by candles. The scene is eerie. Rows of tents stretch into the dark, each marked by a tiny flame trembling against the wind. Soldiers huddle around them, their shadows spilling across the mud like liquid. The candles aren't for comfort. They're signals, lines of faint fire separating friend from foe. One blown out, and confusion spreads like disease. You stop at the edge of camp. Someone shouts, "Keep them covered." A soldier rushes to relight a stub inside a horn lantern. You realize that in war, light is both weapon and weakness. Too much of it, and the enemy sees you. Too little, and you lose each other. Here's your historical fact. During the 100 Years' War, commanders issued strict orders about light discipline. Soldiers were forbidden to show candles outside their tents to avoid revealing positions. Violating that could get you flogged, or worse, shot by your own side. And now for your quirky tidbit. Despite the danger, some soldiers insisted on carrying small beeswax candles into battle. They believed the flame brought divine protection. A superstition so common that when wax was scarce, they'd substitute it with anything that burned, even cheese fat. The smell? Imagine victory seasoned with despair. Historians still argue whether the fear of light or the fear of darkness affected soldiers more. Did armies hide because they feared exposure, or because they feared what waited in the night? The truth, as always, flickers somewhere in between. You walk among the men. Their armor glints faintly in the low light. Most sit silently, staring into their flames, eyes glassy with exhaustion. You can almost feel what they're thinking. If the candle burns through the night, maybe they will too. A young soldier glances up at you, his face smeared with ash. "Got a spare taper?" he asks. You shake your head. He nods, resigned. "Worth more than silver out here," he mutters, tucking his candle stub inside his breastplate. You look around the camp. The quartermaster's tent is guarded like a vault, because inside lies the army's most precious supply. Not gold, not even gunpowder, but wax. Without candles, orders can't be written, wounds can't be treated, and morale slips into the same darkness that hides the enemy. The commander, A broad-shouldered man with a scarred cheek steps out of his tent and surveys the camp. "Lights out by midnight," he growls. "Anyone still burning after curfew answers to me." His men nod, though you can see hesitation in their eyes. They've fought all day. They can't bear the dark just yet. You stand near the campfire as it dies down. A soldier beside you, missing half his teeth, grins weakly. "Can't fight what you can't see," he says. "But can't hide if you do." He laughs, then sighs. "Candle's smarter than us. Knows when to go out." The night thickens. You hear the wind press against the canvas of the tents, the hiss of wax melting, the whisper of prayers. You realize these little flames are doing more than lighting faces. They're keeping fear from spreading. A soldier without light starts thinking too much. About home, about death, about whether the world will even notice if his flame goes out for good. You kneel beside a wounded man. His hands tremble as he shields a candle inside his helmet. The flame dances across his bandaged face. "It helps me sleep," he murmurs. You believe him. The glow softens the edges of pain, makes everything feel smaller, gentler. You think of home, of the family you left behind in the last village, saving their candle stub for morning. The same light that comforted them now comforts killers. It's strange how something so innocent can live so easily between prayer and violence. A distant explosion rips through the quiet. The flame in your companion's helmet flutters wildly, but doesn't die. He stares at it, breathing harder. "See," he says, "still burning." You move toward the command tent, where scribes hunch over a map lit by 2 thick candles. Wax drips like blood across the parchment. One man curses as the flame sputters. Another steadies it with his palm. "If this goes out," he mutters, "so does the plan." It's absurd, you think. Armies marching on light. But maybe it makes sense. What is strategy if not the illusion of control? Just like fire in the wind. Here's something the chronicles don't record. The smell of war wasn't only blood or smoke. It was wax, melted, burned, wasted by the thousands. Every battle left behind not just corpses, but puddles of hardened candlelight. You imagine archaeologists centuries later uncovering them, wondering how something so fragile could survive when soldiers didn't. You walk beyond the camp, where the battlefield begins. It's quiet now, just broken armor, fallen flags, and the faint gleam of half-melted candles beside bodies. Some were offerings, some were prayers, and some were just bad timing. A breeze passes, and the remaining flames sway but hold. Even here, light refuses to surrender. You kneel and pick up a half-burned candle, still warm. It feels absurdly alive. You imagine someone lighting it hours ago, maybe whispering a name. You stand and hold it up to the dark. The tiny glow doesn't chase away the emptiness, but claims a piece of it. You whisper softly, "You're doing fine," unsure if you mean the candle or yourself. As you walk back toward camp, dawn teases the horizon. The soldiers rise, stamping out what's left of their fires. One man nudges the wax puddle near his tent, muttering, "More valuable than gold, that." He scrapes it into a pouch. You smile faintly. He's not wrong, because in this place, where everything breaks, burns, or dies, only light survives long enough to be missed. And maybe that's why humanity keeps chasing it. Because no matter how many wars we fight, the moment someone lights a candle, the world feels civilized again. You tuck the salvage candle into your pocket, its surface rough with soot. You'll carry it until it's needed. After all, a little stolen light never hurt anyone. The war fades behind you, replaced by a quieter kind of chaos, city life. You walk into a narrow street where chimneys breathe constant smoke and everything smells faintly burnt. Wool, bread, even the air itself. The first thing you notice isn't the noise or the smell, though. It's the walls. Every house is streaked black, every ceiling mottled gray. The culprit? Candles. Thousands of them. You duck into a modest home. The woman inside smiles politely and waves you toward the fire. The air feels heavy, like breathing through a layer of dust. You glance up, and sure enough, the ceiling is sooty, streaked in dark clouds. "That's from tallow," she says, noticing your stare. "Smoke's like sin, but cheaper than grace." You laugh softly, though the joke stings with truth. This isn't about luxury anymore. It's about survival. Candles light the home, but they also pollute it. The air you breathe, the clothes you wear, the food you cook, it all carries that unmistakable scent of burning fat. Here's your historical fact. By the 17th century, entire cities suffered from indoor pollution caused by tallow candles. In London, smoke stains on ceilings were so common that tallow gray became a recognized paint color to disguise them. People didn't clean the soot, they matched it. Now, for your quirky tidbit, some households try to sweeten the air by burning candles made with herbs mixed into the tallow: lavender, sage, rosemary. The results? Mixed at best. A 17th century French diarist wrote, "My room smelled as though death itself had attended a garden party." Historians still argue whether the rise of beeswax candles was more about hygiene than luxury. Did the rich truly crave purity, or just clean air? Either way, light began to shape not just society, but architecture itself. You can see it here. The windows are small, almost afraid to open. The soot traps warmth, yes, but also claustrophobia. The walls lean inward like tired shoulders. Every room feels a little smaller, a little darker, because of the candles try to save it. You step outside, coughing lightly. The street is packed. Vendors selling candles by the handful. Chandlers yelling about smokeless fat or pure wax blends. You watch a man haggle for half a dozen, pay with his last coin, and clutch them like relics. Light, it seems, still runs the market. A nearby shop displays candles in rows, short, stubby ones for the poor, long, tapering beauties for the wealthy. You touch one, and it leaves a faint grease mark on your finger. The shopkeeper catches you and narrows her eyes. "That's a shilling if you break it." You smile. "How long does it burn?" She smirks. "Depends how rich you are." Her answer lingers in your mind as you wander deeper into the city. You pass a churchyard where melted wax drips like rain from old candle holders, forming stalactites of forgotten prayers. You step into a tavern where the air is yellow with smoke and laughter. The candles here are fat, cheap, and plentiful. They burn unevenly, spilling wax across tables and tankards. But the people don't mind. The light is enough. You sit at the bar and strike up a conversation with a mason wiping soot from his hands. "You'd think we'd have found a cleaner way by now," he says, sipping his ale. "You ever seen the church roof? It's blacker than my lungs." You nod, and yet no one gives it up. He chuckles, shaking his head. "Would you?" You glance at the candle between you. The flame wavers in a draft, then steadies again, its glow soft but insistent. "No," you admit. "I guess I wouldn't." It's strange, isn't it? The very thing poisoning homes is also what makes them livable. People would rather cough in light than breathe in darkness. Maybe that's always been the trade-off. Outside again, you watch a lamplighter moving down the street, touching each sconce with a long pole tipped in flame. His face glows as he works, a magician conjuring stars from iron bowls. Children follow behind him, laughing and skipping, their shadows leaping over cobblestones. He pauses to light a street corner near a tailor's shop and tips his hat. "Evening to you," he says. You nod, watching the flames swell and catch. "That's the good wax," he adds proudly. "Church surplus. Burns bright, burns true." You wonder how many hands that wax passed through to end up here. How many bees, merchants, and chandlers gave it life. Each flame is the final chapter of an invisible journey, ending on this corner, in this moment, to make the night feel less endless. The lamplighter moves on, and the city transforms in his wake. The walls shimmer gold, the fog glows softly, and suddenly, everything looks almost beautiful. You realize something you hadn't noticed before. Candlelight hides the ugliness. It smooths out dirt, softens scars, forgives imperfection. No wonder people crave it. You duck into an alleyway where the glow fades. A young woman crouches near a pile of discarded wax, scraping it into a small pot. "Scrap burner," she explains when you ask. "Boil it down, make new ones." People pay less if they don't care what it's made from. You watch her melt the scraps over a tiny fire. The smell is awful, burnt hair and oil, but her focus is calm, practiced. "One good candle buys supper," she says, not looking up. "Two buys the night." That phrase stays with you long after you leave. Buys the night. It's true, isn't it? Every flicker you've seen so far, from the priest's altar to the peasant's table, has been a transaction, not just of money, but of effort, hope, and time. You wander to the edge of the city where the air is clearer. The stars above look faint, almost shy compared to the yellow haze below. You close your eyes and think about all those burning rooms, all that smoke rising skyward. Maybe that's what history is. In the end, a collection of melted lights, burned so we could see a little further. The scent of tallow clings to your clothes as you exhale slowly. It's not pleasant, but it's real, a reminder of how messy progress always is. You smile faintly and whisper to the dark, "We'll find a cleaner way someday." The breeze doesn't answer, but somewhere far off, a single candle guttering in a window steadies itself. And that's enough. The city fades behind you as the road turns coastal. The air sharpens with salt, and the sky stretches wider than it has in days. Waves crash distantly, the sound steady and ancient. You're heading toward a monastery perched on a cliff, where the ocean winds meet the smell of wax and prayer. They call this place the Wax Empire, not because it's large, but because it holds the monopoly on faith's brightest currency, light. As you approach, bells toll low and deep. A monk greets you at the gate, his robes stiff with salt and candle smoke. He doesn't speak at first, just nods and gestures for you to follow him through arched stone halls lit entirely by candles. Hundreds of them. The air is golden and heavy, thick with warmth and the faint sweetness of beeswax. This is what wealth smells like in the 14th century. Not perfume, not spice. Wax. Here's your historical fact. Many medieval monasteries across Europe, especially in France and Germany, dominated the candle trade. They owned vast bee colonies, managed networks of wax merchants, and even imposed spiritual taxes payable in candles. Churches might glow in the name of God, but behind the glow was a business plan. Now for your quirky tidbit. Some abbeys kept detailed wax ledgers, tracking every ounce of beeswax like treasure. A single missing candle could spark days of investigation. One abbot even excommunicated a monk for borrowing 2 tapers to read after curfew. You can imagine the trial. "Forgive me, Father, for I have over-illuminated." Historians still argue whether monasteries truly believed in the sacred nature of light or just saw a market opportunity. But looking around, it's hard to tell the difference. Faith and profit mingle like melted wax, impossible to separate once they've fused. You follow your silent guide into the scriptorium, where monks copy manuscripts by candlelight. Their faces are half hidden behind hoods, their hands steady as they glide quills across parchment. The only sounds are scratching ink, soft breathing, and the occasional drip of wax hitting the floor. It's mesmerizing, the way the light seems alive here. The candles don't just illuminate the words, they animate them. You realize that these men, copying by candlelight, are preserving civilization itself. Without them, knowledge dies in the dark. One monk looks up at you, eyes tired but kind. "The light must not go out," he whispers. You nod, though you're not sure he's talking about the candle. You move through the refectory next, where the monks dine in silence. The only movement comes from the flames flickering in a great iron chandelier above. Each candle is perfectly spaced, perfectly trimmed, burning in quiet synchronization. It's beautiful, almost eerie. You sit beside one monk who slides a ledger toward you. Rows of numbers fill the page. Candles burn per day, per service, per monk. "We account for light," he says softly. "God does not like waste." You smile faintly. "And does God get to share the profits?" He looks at you for a long moment, then chuckles under his breath. "Only an exposure." That one earns a laugh, even from the scribe across the table, who quickly hides it behind his sleeve. For a brief moment, the solemn air lightens. Later, you follow the sound of chanting into the abbey's chapel. It's magnificent. Vaulted ceilings, carved stone, stained glass pulsing with candlelight. The smell of melted wax clings to everything. Robes, wood, even the prayers. At the center stands the abbot, his face haloed by light. He gestures to an enormous beeswax candle, the paschal flame, the same one you saw faintly in the city cathedral. But this one's different, taller, purified, revered. It represents resurrection, eternity, and divine order. But you can't stop thinking about the labor it took to make it. The hives, the harvest, the heat. Eternity, it seems, has a very human supply chain. The chant swells as the abbot lights it. The room glows gold, every wall trembling with shadow. The monks bow their heads. For a moment, the candle becomes the sun, the air vibrating with warmth and awe. You stand perfectly still, feeling both reverent and strangely uneasy, because it hits you all at once. This light doesn't just belong to God, it belongs to them. The monks control who receives it, when, and at what cost. Even holiness needs inventory management. You step outside into the courtyard. The air feels colder, the sky grayer. A monk is tending hives along the wall, humming softly as he works. He looks at you and says, "The bees do their part. We do ours." You crouch beside him. "Do you ever get tired of it?" You ask. "All the counting, all the wax, all the rules." He shrugs. "Faith is like wax. It must be melted to take shape. If it hardens too soon, it cracks." You nod slowly, realizing he's right, and not just about religion. Everything you've seen so far, fire, fat, oil, bees, man, depends on transformation. Nothing stays pure for long. Even light has to get its hands dirty. As the monk scrapes excess wax from a mold, a bee lands on his wrist. He doesn't flinch. "They serve without knowing why," he murmurs. "Maybe we do too." You walk to the cliff's edge, where the sea stretches endlessly below. The wind tries to snuff out your candle, but you shield it with your hand. Its flame bows and bends but doesn't die. Behind you, the monastery glows like a second sun against the gray horizon, a fortress of faith and enterprise fused together. You imagine the monks praying over ledgers, counting their blessings and their profits in equal measure. Maybe that's the secret of the Middle Ages. No one ever separated the sacred from the practical. Light, after all, belonged to both heaven and humanity. The wind shifts. You take one last look at the abbey, its windows burning gold, its bells tolling like heartbeats, and whisper to yourself, so this is how faith glows. You turn away, leaving footprints in the salt-stained earth. The candle in your hand flickers, weak but steady, and somewhere behind you, a monk whispers a final prayer, not for your soul, but for the flame. The sea wind follows you down the coast, tugging at your cloak and carrying the faint scent of tar and salt. You can hear gulls screaming overhead, and beneath them, the rhythm of waves against wood. You've reached a port town, a place where the hunger for light has spilled onto the ocean. The docks groan beneath barrels, ropes, and the creak of masts. Somewhere nearby, someone is boiling oil, and the smell hits you like a slap. Sharp, briny, unmistakably whale. You've stepped into the age of trade, an age where candlelight no longer comes from bees, but from the depths of the sea. Sailors shout to one another as they unload casks labeled spermaceti. It sounds elegant, almost poetic, until you realize what it is. The precious oil harvested from the head cavities of sperm whales. The cleanest, brightest burning substance humanity had ever found. It's liquid gold, and it glistens like melted sunlight. Here's your historical fact. By the 17th century, whaling had become a massive global industry. Ships from Europe and later America sailed for months, sometimes years, to hunt whales. Spermaceti oil, used for candles and lamps, burned with almost no smoke and produced a steady, white light unlike anything before it. For the first time, darkness could be conquered without the stench of death. And your quirky tidbit, sailors called spermaceti whale brains, and they were partly right. When freshly extracted, it looked like shimmering jelly. Some even rub it on their skin, claiming it cured sunburns and wrinkles. Imagine going home from a voyage saying, "I brought you the latest in maritime skincare." Historians still argue whether the rise of whaling was driven by necessity or vanity. Was it humanity's desperate need for better light, or simply our endless thirst for luxury? Whatever the reason, by the late 1600s, the oceans ran red for the sake of white candles. You step aboard a ship docked for unloading. The deck is slick with oil, the planks stained dark from years of work. A sailor greets you with a toothless grin. "You're just in time," he says, motioning to the crew below. "We cracked ahead this morning." You hesitate, unsure whether to be curious or horrified. He lifts a bucket filled with pearly liquid that glows faintly even under the gray sky. "That there," he says proudly, "is the light of the world." He's not wrong. The whaling boom revolutionized how humanity illuminated its nights. Cities like Nantucket and New Bedford in America, and ports in Amsterdam and London, became rich off the trade. Chandlers churned out spermaceti candles so fine they were fit for kings, and priced like sin. You walk through the docks as merchants shout, deals struck over the clamor of gulls. 50 barrels to Paris, 60 to Lisbon. The numbers are dizzying. Somewhere in these transactions, the value of human life and whale life blurs. You watch as coins clink in one man's hand, and think of the monks counting wax by the ounce. The product changed, but the greed remained the same. Inside a warehouse, the smell is overwhelming, salty, smoky, sweet all at once. Workers pour liquid spermaceti into molds, the surface glimmering like polished marble. When cooled, the candles turn milky white, their texture almost silky. You pick one up. It feels cold and flawless, nothing like the rough, greasy tallow sticks of old. The foreman catches your expression. Beautiful, aren't they? He says, wiping his brow. We call them day candles. Burn bright as noon. He hands you a lit one, and the difference is immediate. The flame stands tall, steady, pure. No smoke, no sputter, no smell. The light is almost blue-white, and suddenly everything around you, the faces, the ropes, the barrels, appears clearer, sharper. You understand instantly why the wealthy went mad for it. But beauty always comes at a cost. You walk to the pier's edge, where a young sailor sits carving a tiny whale out of driftwood. His hands shake as he works. First voyage, you ask. He nods. Killed my first yesterday. He pauses, staring out at the sea. They scream, you know. When they die, the sound stays. You don't reply. You don't have to. The air between you carries enough ghosts. He pockets the carving and stands. But we can't stop, he says quietly. The world needs light. You watch him walk away, and you realize how easily necessity becomes justification. Everyone here believes they're serving progress. After all, who can argue against light? Who can condemn illumination? And yet, somewhere out on that horizon, whales are vanishing faster than anyone can count. The same flame that banished darkness is erasing life. You find yourself back in the warehouse as night falls. The chandlers work by the glow of their own product. Rows of perfect, smokeless candles burning in silence. The light is ethereal, almost too clean. It feels unnatural after so many centuries of flicker and soot. You catch yourself missing the old, imperfect flame. A clerk nearby mutters, "No one wants tallow anymore. Even the poor save for these." He gestures at the neat stacks of spermaceti candles. They burn longer. They make you forget the dark ever existed. You nod slowly, because he's right. And maybe that's the danger. When light becomes too perfect, you stop respecting it. You take one candle and hold it up. Its wax glows faintly even before it's lit, like a secret stored inside. You think of the bees, the monks, the peasants, the soldiers, all those who fought the night before the whales took their place. It's strange how history trades one kind of labor for another. Outside, the sea is black glass. The moon hangs low, a pale echo of the light mankind now forges. You strike a match and light the candle. The flame stands still, strong against the breeze. It casts no smoke, no scent, just quiet brilliance. You stare at it, mesmerized. It's perfect, too perfect. You whisper to the dark waves, "We'll regret this." The candle doesn't answer. It just burns, calm, unbothered, eternal. The light mankind always wanted, finally achieved, and bought with blood and silence. You set it down on the dock and watch the tide crawl closer. When the first drop of seawater touches the wax, the flame sputters and dies. The darkness returns instantly, bigger, hungrier, honest. And somehow, you feel relief. The sea mist fades behind you as you step into a new kind of world. One humming with gears, smoke, and restless ambition. You're in the 18th century now, the heart of the industrial age. The air smells of coal, iron, and innovation, and the cities never truly sleep anymore. Yet even here, in this dawning era of machinery, candles still reign in parlors, ships, and salons. They burn above ledgers, experiments, and revolutions. Their light is civilization's heartbeat, steady, golden, alive. But the ground is shifting beneath them. You make your way through a London street thrumming with life. Posters cling to lampposts, announcing lectures on science, chemistry, and modern illumination. The word gaslight appears again and again. You pause at one pamphlet that reads, "The future burns brighter." You smile grimly. The Chandlers would disagree. Here's your historical fact. By the early 1800s, gaslighting was spreading through Europe's cities. Factories, theaters, and wealthy homes were outfitted with new gas jets, offering brighter and cheaper light than candles. Within decades, entire industries, candle making, whaling, and oil refining, were forced to reinvent themselves or fade into history. And for your quirky tidbit, when gaslights were first introduced, people feared they'd explode, melt their furniture, or even steal oxygen from the room. Some physicians genuinely warned that gaslit air might cause madness. Spoiler, people still install them anyway. Historians still argue whether the Industrial Revolution killed candlelight or simply changed its meaning. Did humanity abandon the flame or romanticize it? You're about to see the answer unfold. You enter a grand ballroom lit by chandeliers, but something feels off. The light doesn't flicker. It burns steady, white, mechanical. There's no whisper of wax melting, no scent of honey or tallow. The room feels brighter, yes, but colder too. Artificial perfection replacing organic warmth. You glance around and see nobles marveling at the glow. Just imagine, one man says, "No more soot, no more expense." His wife sighs dreamily. "No more romance, either," she murmurs. You smile. She's right. Candlelight doesn't just illuminate, it flatters. It hides imperfections, softens reality. Gaslight exposes everything. A servant passes you a drink, muttering. The Chandlers are furious. You raise an eyebrow. Losing business? He laughs softly. Losing purpose. You wander out into the street where the new lamps hiss quietly along the road. The air smells metallic, strange, like progress with an aftertaste of regret. A group of boys toss stones at one of the lamps. When it doesn't break, they cheer as though they've beaten the sun. You can't help thinking of the monks guarding their wax, of sailors boiling whales, of peasants pinching their flames to save an hour. All that effort, all that reverence, and now light pours from pipes, endless and impersonal. Humanity has tamed the dark so thoroughly it's starting to forget why it feared it. You duck into a small candle shop that refuses to die. Inside, the shelves are nearly empty, the wax dusty, the Chandlers weary. An old man behind the counter looks up. "Here for the real thing?" he asks, voice raspy with smoke and pride. You nod. "Still making them?" He smiles faintly. "Always. People think they want brighter, but they come back. They always come back." He hands you a candle wrapped in paper, pure beeswax, golden and soft. "Hold it," he says. "Feel that." You nod. It's warm even unlit, faintly sticky, alive in a way gas never will be. He leans closer. Gas burns faster than a heart can beat. But a candle listens. You light it right there in the shop. The flame trembles, finding its rhythm, painting the old man's face in amber. Suddenly, the gaslights outside feel too harsh, too loud. This little flame, fragile, imperfect, breathes. It breathes. You take a slow breath of your own. The smell of honey and smoke fills your lungs. You didn't realize how much you'd missed it. The old man gestures to the shelves behind him, where boxes of unsold candles gather dust. "They'll all be gone soon," he says softly. "People say wax is dead, but they don't understand. Wax doesn't die. It melts, changes shape, waits for a new mold." You smile. "That's poetic." He grins. "That's survival." As you step back outside, the sky is dimming. The gaslights flicker on, bathing the street in white clarity. But up in one window, a single candle burns. Its glow looks warmer, truer. You realize something. Perfection has no soul. The candle, though, it remembers. You wander past a coffee house where philosophers argue about industry, science, and God. One man slams his fist on the table. "We've outshone nature itself," he declares. His friend replies dryly, "Then why do you still light candles when you write?" You chuckle, walking on. The truth is, even as the world brightens, the human heart keeps one small corner for the old glow. Because progress satisfies the mind, but candlelight speaks to something older, to comfort, intimacy, memory. The scent of beeswax lingers in your sleeve as the night deepens. You realize this moment marks the turning point, not the death of the candle, but its rebirth. It will no longer rule economies or define class, but it will never vanish. It's too human for extinction. You stop at a park bench beneath the new lamps. Their light hums quietly, efficient but soulless. You take out the beeswax candle and light it. Its flame dances beneath the gaslight glow like a heartbeat refusing to stop. And as people pass, some glance down, smiling faintly without knowing why. Because deep inside, everyone recognizes it. The old warmth, the old comfort. The reminder that light isn't just for seeing, it's for feeling. You let it burn until the wax pools in your hand, then blow it out gently. The smoke curls upward like a sigh. For a moment, the gaslights seem too white, too clean, too empty. And you whisper to the night, "We've brightened the world, but maybe we've dimmed ourselves." The wind catches the last thread of smoke and carries it away. Somewhere, faintly, you swear you can still smell honey. The next morning, the city feels restless. The gaslights hum above empty streets, and posters flutter on every wall. Freedom, liberty, equality. The air buzzes with something electric, revolution. You follow the sound of chanting down a cobblestone street until you reach a crowded square. Faces glow with passion, not just from belief, but from hundreds of tiny flames. Candles, thousands of them, held high in defiance. You've stepped into an age when light no longer just illuminates. It inspires rebellion. The world has changed. Empires tremble, ideas ignite, and every secret meeting, every declaration, every whispered plan begins the same way, with someone striking a match. The candle's flicker becomes the revolution's heartbeat. Here's your historical fact. During the Enlightenment and the great revolutions of the 18th and 19th centuries, candlelight played a surprisingly literal role. Intellectual salons, revolutionary gatherings, and secret assemblies were almost always lit by candles. They burned late into the night while pamphlets were written, manifestos signed, and plans whispered. The light of reason, both metaphorical and real, was candlelight. And here's your quirky tidbit. In Paris, some revolutionaries placed candles in their windows to signal safe houses. The British press later mocked it as the illumination of treason, but for the French, it became a silent code. Light meant hope, dark meant danger. Historians still argue whether the Enlightenment's famous light of reason was consciously tied to literal candlelight, or if that symbolism came later. But when you see the fire in these people's eyes, you realize they're one and the same. You stand in the square as a young woman climbs atop a barrel, her candle raised like a torch. "Let them have their gold," she shouts. "We have light." The crowd roars. The flame wobbles in the wind, threatening to die. But she shields it with her hand and keeps shouting. You can feel it, the power, the beauty, the fragility of it all. Nearby, A printer hauls boxes of pamphlets into the street. He's been up all night, working by candlelight to produce essays and speeches that could change the world. His fingertips are black with ink, his shirt collar burned from leaning too close to the flame. He laughs wild-eyed, worth every drop of wax. You peer into his workshop. It's chaos. Molten wax pooling beside stacks of papers, wicks smoldering in glass jars, melted stubs littering the floor like fallen soldiers. And yet, it feels holy. The air smells of wax and rebellion, the perfume of progress. He hands you a candle. Here, he says, we light what they fear most. You look at it, just a stub, barely an inch left to burn, but when you hold it, you feel its weight. It's the weight of 1,000 sleepless minds daring to imagine something better. You walk through the streets as night falls. Windows glow with small flames. People read aloud by candlelight, talk by it, dream by it. You can almost hear the whisper of centuries behind you. The monks, the sailors, the peasants, all passing the flame forward, one hand to the next. You pass a salon, its windows fogged with smoke. Inside, philosophers argue under candelabras, their words tumbling over one another like sparks. Knowledge, one says, is the only light that grows when shared. Another replies, then let's burn the old world down to make room for it. You smile. The irony isn't lost on you. For thousands of years, light was a possession. Now it's becoming an idea. But revolution has a way of consuming its own flame. Days later, you return to the same square, and the candles are gone. Smoke rises from blackened buildings. The wind carries the faint smell of wax and ash. You pick up a melted stub from the cobblestones. It's still warm. That's when it hits you. The same light that inspires can also destroy. The same flame that leads can blind. Candles don't care who holds them. They'll burn for tyrant or rebel alike. In a nearby house, you find a group of survivors huddled together. Their faces are hollow, but someone has lit a single candle on the table. Its glow flickers weakly, reflecting in their eyes. You sit with them, silent. After a while, a boy whispers, "Mama says as long as there's light, we're not forgotten." You look at the flame. It's trembling, thin, almost nothing, and yet it fills the room. You realize that through all of history's chaos, people have kept returning to this same gesture. One flame in the dark, one fragile defiance against oblivion. As dawn creeps in, you step outside again. The sun rises over rooftops still scarred with soot. In one window, a candle still burns beside a broken tricolor flag. You smile faintly. Revolutions end, but the habit of light survives. A voice beside you says, "You can kill a man, but not his candle." You turn. It's the printer, his clothes torn, but his eyes alive. "They smashed my press," he says, "but I'll start again." The wax always melts, but there's always more. You help him gather the scraps, burned paper, bits of wick, clumps of wax hardened on stone. "Rebuild?" you ask. He nods. "Reignite." You watch as he lights one of the salvaged stubs. The flame catches slowly, trembling before finding its rhythm. It's small, unsteady, but it's enough. All around the city, smoke rises like ghosts, but in scattered windows, single candles begin to glow again. You can see them from the hills, points of gold across the ash-gray landscape. Little promises, little rebellions, and you think of what light has always been: a statement, a refusal, a reminder that even in ruin, humanity's instinct is not to hide, but to burn. You turn to leave the city. Behind you, the wind catches the faint smell of melted wax and paper, the scent of both destruction and rebirth. You whisper, "The light never belongs to anyone. It only passes through. The candle in your hand burns low, hot wax dripping onto your fingers, stinging a little, but you don't let go. The pain feels right. It feels honest. After all, every revolution, like every candle, burns brightest just before it dies. You follow the scent of soot and ink through the 19th century as revolutions fade into routine and factories take their place. The world grows louder, faster, hungrier. Metal presses pound, trains scream, and steam rises like breath from the earth itself. Humanity, it seems, has traded silence for speed. And yet, somewhere in this new rhythm, the soft pulse of candlelight still survives. You find yourself in a factory district, where chimneys tower like cathedrals. It's here that candles make their final stand as industry, not art. The chandlers have grown clever. They've adapted. Inside a brick warehouse, you see workers in aprons pouring molten wax into long metal pipes. Rows upon rows of molds gleam under skylights. The air is heavy with warmth and the faint, nostalgic scent of beeswax mixed with something unfamiliar: chemistry. Here's your historical fact. By the mid-19th century, stearic acid candles, made from animal fat but purified through new chemical processes, dominated the market. They burned cleanly, cheaply, and could be mass-produced in enormous quantities. Candle making, once an artisanal craft guarded by guilds, had become an industrial science. Now for your quirky tidbit. Stearic acid was discovered almost by accident when a French chemist tried to create a non-smelly tallow candle and instead stumbled upon a way to separate the fats. It was such a success that Napoleon III gave medals to candle manufacturers for advancing civilization. Imagine a world where your Nobel Prize comes with a wick. Historians still argue whether industrial light democratized comfort or simply commercialized it. Was mass production truly progress, or just the loss of magic? You walk down the production line, watching as each candle emerges identical to the last. Uniform, odorless, perfect. The workers move like parts of the machinery itself, dipping, trimming, boxing. The rhythm is mechanical, but hypnotic. A foreman waves you over. His hands are stained white from wax, his expression proud. "We light the world now," he says. Every home, every shop, every factory. You glance around at the endless rows of candles and nod. You've made night optional. He grins. Exactly. Light for everyone. But you can't help noticing the irony. In this bright new world, the people who make the light still work in the shadows. Their wages are low, their hours long. The flicker of progress, it seems, doesn't reach every corner. You step outside as evening falls. The city glows not with candles, but with the new hybrid of fire and machine. Gas lamps flickering, windows lit with a mix of stearic tapers and early kerosene lamps. You walk along a canal, the reflection of flames trembling in the water. You duck into a boarding house, where a group of workers are gathered around a single candle stuck in a bottle. They're playing cards, laughing softly between rounds. The candle burns slow and steady, throwing warm light on tired faces. Factory work, you ask. One man nods. Candle plant. Irony, huh? Spend all day making light, then come home to just one. You smile sadly. At least it's a good one. He shrugs. Better than tallow. Doesn't smell like regret. The group laughs, and you join them. It's an old joke by now. The memory of tallow's stink still haunts anyone over 30. You think about how each generation defines progress differently. To these men, a clean flame is enough. To their children, it won't be. You climb to the upper floor later, where the boarding house keeper An older woman with hands rough from scrubbing is trimming wicks in a tray. I buy them in bulk now, she says proudly. Used to be I made my own. She cuts another candle, sharp and practiced. Still like the smell, though. Reminds me of quiet. Quiet. That's what's disappearing. In the roar of engines and factories, the soft sounds of the candle age, the drip, the flicker, the sigh of melting wax are fading, but not gone. Not yet. You sit by the window and light a candle yourself. The flame wavers, steadying in the draft. Outside, smokestack silhouette against the darkening sky. The candle's glow feels fragile compared to the fiery furnaces and glaring gas lamps. And yet, it feels truer. Human. You think of how strange it is that people once feared the dark, but now fear stillness. The candle's light is patient. It doesn't rush to fill the room. It just expands gently like breath. You realize that's why it endures. Machines may outshine it, but they'll never replace it. The landlady sits across from you, her hands clasped. You know, she says, I light one every night before bed. Habit from my mother. She said it keeps your dreams from wandering too far. You chuckle. Did it work? She smiles. I still wake up here, don't I? You both laugh quietly as the candle burns lower. When you leave the boarding house, the city's skyline glows in layers. Orange furnaces, white gaslights, and here and there, faint yellow flickers from windows where people still keep their candles. Maybe out of nostalgia, maybe out of faith, maybe just because they like the warmth. You pause on a bridge overlooking the river. A steamboat passes beneath you, its lamps blazing. The reflection ripples, scattering light across the water. You take out one of the factory candles you pocketed earlier, strike a match, and hold it up. The tiny flame looks insignificant against the industrial glow, but it still commands your attention. You whisper, "You'll outlast them all, won't you?" And somehow, you know it's true. Even now, as electricity waits just beyond the horizon, there's something eternal about this small, living light. It's not the brightest. It's not the cleanest. But it listens. It waits. It reminds. You blow it out softly, and the smoke curls upward like a ghost waving goodbye to its century. The night smells faintly of wax, iron, and progress. And somewhere between them, the faint heartbeat of a flame that refuses to die. You stand now at the edge of another transformation, the late 19th century, when the world begins to hum with invisible energy. The air crackles differently here. Wires snake through the streets like veins of lightning, and glass bulbs start to appear in windows, glowing like tiny captured stars. The first electric lights. And just like that, humanity's oldest companion, the candle, faces extinction. The year is 1880-something, and you're walking through New York City. It smells of horses, coal, and possibility. Above you, a tangle of new power lines buzz faintly. People stop to stare at the new street lamps that shine without smoke, without flame, without the faintest hint of wax. It feels wrong somehow. Too steady, too sterile. You slip into a hardware store where curious customers are gathered around a glowing bulb. It's the invention of the century, they say. Safer, cheaper, brighter. The light that never dies, boasts a salesman. You can't help but smirk. Humanity's been saying that for thousands of years, and it never quite pans out. Here's your historical fact. When Thomas Edison patented his practical incandescent bulb in 1879, it took less than a generation for electric lighting to spread across major cities. By the early 1900s, gaslight was fading, and candle use had dropped by more than half. Within decades, electric grids replaced centuries of flame-lit life. Now for your quirky tidbit. In some early electrified neighborhoods, people were so afraid of the new cold light that they refused to sleep with bulbs on, claiming it stole the soul. Electric companies actually hired actors to stand under bulbs reading books to prove it was safe. The irony: candle smoke killed far more people than electricity ever did. Historians still argue whether this transition was liberation or loss. Did electricity truly free humanity from darkness, or simply disconnect it from the warmth that came with the struggle against it? You walk outside again and find yourself in a quiet residential street. In most windows, the new electric glow shines proudly, but in one, a small brownstone on the corner, a flicker catches your eye. Candlelight. Curiosity pulls you closer. Through the window, you see an elderly woman sitting beside a writing desk. She's dressed in black silk, her hair pinned in a tight bun, her face softened by the flickering light. A single beeswax candle burns beside her papers, the flame mirrored in her spectacles. You knock gently. She looks up and smiles. "Come in, dear," she says. Her voice trembles slightly, but her presence feels steady, anchored in the old ways. The room smells faintly of honey and lavender. You glance around. Portraits, lace curtains, shelves of books, everything bathed in that soft, familiar gold. "You still use candles?" you ask. She nods. "The bulbs hurt my eyes." And she hesitates, smiling wistfully. "They have no soul." You sit across from her. "You were alive before all this," you say, gesturing toward the window where the electric glow seeps through like fog. "What's it like, watching light change?" She folds her hands. "When I was a girl, we earned our light. Every evening, my mother would trim the wicks, melt the stubs, say a prayer of thanks for the day's flame. Now," she glances at the bulb overhead, unlit. "Now people flip a switch and call it progress." Her eyes gleam in the candlelight, but they've forgotten the cost, forgotten to be grateful. You think about that for a while. The bulb offers convenience, but not ritual. Light used to demand respect, effort, attention, gratitude. Now it's constant, effortless, invisible. You begin to wonder whether the dark taught humanity more than the light ever could. The woman chuckles softly, interrupting your thoughts. "I keep one lit every night," she says. "For memory's sake. For company." She leans closer to the flame, her face softening. "You know, they say electricity hums, but candles, they whisper." You smile. "What do they whisper?" She shrugs gently. "Whatever you need to hear." Outside, thunder rumbles faintly in the distance. The sky darkens, and rain begins to fall against the glass. The electric lights flicker, falter, and then die. Across the street, people shout in surprise. The city plunges in a sudden darkness. All except this one room, still glowing in its quiet circle of gold. You and the woman sit in silence for a moment, the rain pattering outside. "See," she says softly, "progress always forgets a storm." You chuckle, and candles remember it. She nods. They were born from it. You stare at the flame, mesmerized. The way it bends and sways, the tiny halo it throws against her face. For a moment, time dissolves. You're not in 1880 anymore. You're in every century, every cave, every monastery. The same glow, the same warmth, the same defiance against the dark. The rain eases. Across the street, the lights flicker back on. Harsh, white, unblinking. You blink too, eyes adjusting to their sterility. The room suddenly feels smaller, colder. The woman sighs, snuffing the candle with a silver lid. The smoke curls upward, soft and fragrant. "Progress," she whispers, "always wins." But it never smiles. You stand to leave, reluctant. "Thank you," you say. She nods, eyes shining. "Come back someday, when they build something brighter. I'll still be here, lighting my little one." Outside, the city buzzes again. The rain has washed the streets clean, and reflections of electric bulbs shimmer in every puddle. But you glance back once more at her window, and there it is, the faintest trace of candle smoke curling like a memory. You breathe it in, the scent of wax and time. It smells like endurance. You walk on through the glowing city, feeling oddly lonely. The street lamps hum above, flawless, efficient. But there's something missing, something alive. You whisper to yourself, "We've mastered light, but maybe lost the warmth." And as you pass a lamppost, you swear the reflection of your breath looks like a flame. Just for a second, the years race forward, and you race with them, past the horse and carriage, past the factory whistles, past the flicker of gaslight. The 20th century erupts around you in a blur of electricity, neon, and motion. Light no longer flickers, it dominates. It hums through wires, explodes in bulbs, dances across film reels and television screens. Humanity, it seems, has finally won its war against the dark. And yet, somewhere in that victory, something quieter is missing. You stand on a busy New York street in the 1920s. The air smells of rain, perfume, and exhaust. Billboards flash like miniature suns, and shop fronts gleam with the glare of electricity. You pass a store window displaying rows of shining lamps labeled "The Modern Home." In the corner, almost hidden behind the dazzle, sits a small box of candles. Emergency use only. You can't help smiling. That's what light has become now. An afterthought, a backup plan. Here's your historical fact. By the early 1900s, candle manufacturing had collapsed as electric power grids spread. Candlelight was no longer a necessity, but a novelty. By 1925, most urban homes in Europe and America had replaced their lamps and tapers with switches. The candle's empire had fallen. Now for your quirky tidbit. After electricity took over, department stores began marketing candles as decorative luxuries. Perfumed, colored, twisted into spirals, they were sold not for seeing, but for feeling. The candle reinvented itself as a symbol of mood and intimacy. Humanity, it seemed, wasn't ready to let go entirely. Historians still argue whether this reinvention was nostalgia or evolution. Did people miss the light or the meaning that came with tending it? You duck into a speakeasy hidden behind an unmarked door. Inside, the noise dies, replaced by low jazz and murmured laughter. The room is lit not by electric bulbs, but by candlelight, soft, golden, smoky. The bartender smiles as you take a seat, helps the gin go down smoother. He jokes, nodding toward the flickering tapers. The glow is warm, forgiving. Everyone looks a little younger, a little more mysterious. You realize this is why the candle survived, not as a source of power, but as a source of illusion. Candlelight hides what the world insists on revealing. It flatters, it softens, it forgives. You watch as a couple dances near the back of the room. Their faces blur and blend into shadows. Electric light's too honest. The woman whispers to her partner. He grins. Then let's stay in the lie. You sip your drink and laugh quietly. Humanity, you think, never truly wanted brightness. It wanted comfort, the kind that lets you forget where the shadows start. Later, you walk outside. The rain has stopped, and the city glows like a giant lantern. Street lamps burn cold and white, but in the windows of apartments, you spot faint yellow flickers. Candles. Not many, but enough to prove the species still remembers. The decades pass quickly. You drift through the mid-century suburbs of the 1950s, the neon jungles of the 1980s, the glowing screens of the 2000s. Everywhere, light multiplies. Humans turn night into day and sleep into inconvenience. But the candle persists, tucked into birthday cakes, church altars, dinner tables, and blackouts. You find yourself in a small kitchen in 1969. The family inside huddles together as a storm knocks out the power. The father rummages through a drawer, muttering curses, until he finds a half-burned candle. He lights it, and instantly the room transforms. The children stop crying. The mother exhales. Even the rain outside seems gentler, better than TV. The father jokes, and everyone laughs. The candle crackles softly, light bouncing off their faces. It's fragile, imperfect, but it's human. You fast forward again, 1973, during the energy crisis. News anchors warn people to conserve electricity. Politicians hold candlelit meetings as symbols of solidarity. Across the world, millions rediscover the glow they thought they'd outgrown. You smile. The irony is delicious. The modern world still needs its old fire to feel alive. By the late 20th century, the candle has become something else entirely. A mood, a ritual, a memory. You step into a small Paris apartment in 1990s, where an artist paints by candlelight. Not because he must, but because he wants to. The bulb is too loud, he says without looking up. This light listens. His words echo those of the old woman from a century ago. It listens. You begin to wonder if all of humanity's inventions are just attempts to recreate what the candle gave freely. Focus, calm, intimacy. You wander through time until you reach the present day. The world is brighter than ever. Cities visible from space. Nights erased by LEDs. Phones glowing in every hand. People can no longer remember what true darkness feels like. But when the power fails, or the storms come, or grief settles heavy in the room, what do they reach for? Not a flashlight, not a phone, a candle. It's almost instinctual. The ritual is the same as it's always been. The match scratch, the whisper of flame, the momentary flare before the calm. And as the light steadies, so do you. You stand now in your own apartment, modern and humming with hidden circuits. You light a single candle on the table. The room changes instantly. Shadows grow softer, time slows. You catch your reflection in the waxy glow and think of every hand that's ever done this same thing. From the prehistoric cave to the cathedral to the factory. You whisper to the flame, you outlasted everything. It flickers once as if agreeing. Maybe the candle never lost its power because it never truly depended on necessity. Maybe it survived because it spoke to something deeper, something no electricity can touch. It's not light we crave, it's meaning. You lean back, watching the flames sway in the stillness. Outside, the city blazes white and endless, but here, in this small circle of gold, time feels human again. And as the candle burns lower, dripping quietly, you realize that no matter how bright the world becomes, people will always find their way back to the flame. Because in a way, the candle was never about seeing, it was about remembering. You blink, and time unfurls again into the soft blue light of the 21st century. The hum of computers replaces the hiss of gas. The glow of screens outshines the stars, and humanity now lives surrounded by artificial suns. Light, once sacred and scarce, has become so common it's almost invisible. You live inside it now, day and night, so saturated by brightness that the idea of darkness feels old-fashioned. And yet, Despite everything, despite cities glowing like constellations, despite phones lighting faces long after midnight, the candle refuses to disappear. You find yourself inside a minimalist apartment, overlooking a metropolis that never sleeps. The room is sleek and white, every surface lit by hidden LEDs. But on the coffee table sits a single flickering flame, a candle, small and deliberate. It smells faintly of cedar and something sweet, maybe nostalgia. A woman in her 30s sits nearby, scrolling through her phone. Every few minutes, she looks up from the cold glow of her screen to stare at the candle, as though reminding herself what real light looks like. You've entered the age of symbolic flame. The candle has evolved once more, not as survival, not as industry, but as ritual. People no longer need light. They need what light means. Here's your historical fact. By the 2020s, global candle sales reached billions annually. Not because of power outages, but because of self-care. Scented, sculpted, mindfulness candles became emblems of peace in a world of overstimulation. The candle's value rose again, not by necessity, but by emotion. And here's your quirky tidbit. Neuroscientists discovered that candlelight's flicker, specifically its gentle frequency, can lower heart rates and relax the brain, mimicking natural firelight patterns that humans evolved to find comforting. In other words, even your nervous system remembers the cave. Historians still argue whether this modern love of candles is irony or instinct. Are people truly connecting to their roots, or just performing nostalgia one wick at a time? You walk through the woman's apartment. She lights another candle near the window, then another on her bookshelf. Soon, her digital light is outnumbered by old-fashioned ones. She smiles faintly, then closes her laptop. The city glows beyond her glass walls, but inside, the air turns warm and alive. You can almost hear the soft whisper of the flames, each one speaking in its ancient, wordless language. She exhales deeply, as though something unclenched in her chest. "It's quiet," she murmurs. "I didn't know I missed that." You smile to yourself. Humanity didn't banish darkness after all. It just buried it under noise. And now, in tiny glass jars sold in billions, people are buying their way back to silence. You wander outside into the night. The street below is a galaxy of screens. Cars pulse with dashboard light. Billboards scream in color. Faces glow cold and blue. But in the windows of cafes and yoga studios, you spot little amber sparks, candles, each one small but defiant. It's as if every window has decided to keep a heartbeat. You stop at one cafe. The sign reads, "Power Outage Special, Coffee by Candlelight." Inside, people laugh, faces soft and golden. A barista grins at you. "Wi-Fi's down," she says. "Guess we'll have a talk like it's 1890. You take a seat near the counter, and for a while, you listen. Without the buzz of devices, the candle flames seem to set the pace of conversation. Everything slows. People listen more, laugh louder. Even the coffee tastes richer. You glance toward a group in the corner. 4 students studying by candlelight. One of them laughs. "Can you believe this used to be normal?" Another shakes his head. "Yeah, but look how good it feels." You nod slightly. "Good. That's the word. It feels good, not efficient, not bright, not advanced, but good. The kind of good that doesn't need explaining." You leave the cafe, the scent of wax and cinnamon following you into the street. A light drizzle falls, making the asphalt shine. Above, towers blaze with electricity, but all you can think about are those small, human circles of flame inside. You keep walking until the city thins into quiet neighborhoods. In one window, you see a family gathered around a cake, the candles burning short and bright. The children's faces glow, eyes wide, the room echoing with laughter and off-key singing. You've seen this ritual for centuries now. One breath, one wish, one flicker of hope extinguished to mark another year survived. Still the same gesture, still the same reverence. The candle, you realize, has never really been about light. It's about attention. Every time someone lights one, they slow down, if only for a heartbeat. It's an act of remembering, of choosing to see instead of just look. You walk to a park bench overlooking the skyline. The horizon is a smear of neon and smog, but the moon hangs faintly above it, and below, in scattered windows, hundreds of small flames blink across the city like grounded stars. It's beautiful in its defiance. You take a candle from your coat pocket, the same one you've carried through centuries of change. You strike a match. The tiny flame flares, then settles, glowing against the glass of your hands. Around you, no one notices. Cars rush past, screens flash advertisements, and yet for you, time stops. This small, trembling light once ruled the world. It commanded empires, crowned kings, bankrupted families, sanctified prayers, and kept love alive in the dark. And though its power has faded, its meaning has not. You hold the flame up toward the skyline, whispering softly, "You're still here." The wind picks up, teasing the flame, bending it until it nearly dies, then steadies. It sways stubbornly, alive as ever. You smile. You always were. And in that moment, with the city roaring below and the candle trembling in your hand, you realize something simple, something ancient. Humanity didn't create light to conquer darkness. It created it to understand itself. The flame dances once more before your eyes, golden and small. You cup it gently, whispering to the centuries behind it, "We still remember." You wake to a quieter world. The city hum fades behind you as you step into a remote countryside, somewhere between time and memory. The air smells of grass, with smoke, and a faint sweetness of wax. Night is falling, and a small cabin glows ahead, its single window flickering with that unmistakable warmth. You move closer, drawn as if by instinct. Inside, a family gathers around table. There's no phone in sight, no humming refrigerator, no glare of screens. Just the sound of spoons tapping bowls and fire crackling in a hearth. The light source, you notice, is simple, a candle, tall and golden, burning in a brass holder. It's mesmerizing. You've seen candles in palaces, on battlefields, in churches and factories, but never one that feels quite like this. Because this one isn't fighting darkness, it's sharing it. You take a seat by the window as they talk softly. The conversation drifts through laughter, pauses, and the occasional silence that feels like comfort rather than emptiness. You can't help smiling. After thousands of years, humanity still finds peace in the same flicker. Here's your historical fact. In the early 21st century, despite technological saturation, candle use reached its highest level since before electricity. Not out of need, but out of yearning. Scented candles became one of the fastest growing global industries, with entire brands built on nostalgia, memory, and calm. The candle, once traded as gold, became the currency of emotion. Now for your quirky tidbit. During the global blackouts and lockdowns of the 2020s, people started keeping emergency ritual kits, candles, matches, notebooks, tea. Psychologists found that lighting a candle reduced anxiety more effectively than watching screens. In a sense, modern humans rediscovered what cave dwellers already knew. Fire doesn't just warm, it listens. Historians still argue whether this return to candles represents regression or recovery. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's simply remembrance, a quiet nod to everything that's come before. The candle on the table sputters softly, its flame bending toward the window's draft. You find yourself holding your breath, as if rooting for it to survive. When it steadies, everyone exhales together. It's a small, wordless victory. One flame, 5 witnesses, thousands of years behind it. You close your eyes for a moment, and suddenly, the centuries fold in on themselves. You're back in a cave, huddled near a smoky flame made of animal fat and reeds. You're kneeling in a cathedral as beeswax light drips onto marble floors. You're a sailor, holding a flickering taper on a storm-tossed deck. You're a monk, measuring wax by the ounce. You're a factory worker, a lover, a writer, all of them reaching for the same thing. That small defiance against the void. When you open your eyes, the candle is still there, unchanged, unmoved by time. Its flame hums quietly, steady as a heartbeat. You lean closer, watching how it curves and straightens, how it dances without fear of being replaced by LEDs or forgotten by modernity. You realize that every age has tried to make light better, cleaner, faster, but never more meaningful. The Father stands and adds another candle beside the first. The 2 flames merge, brighter but not harsher, twin hearts breathing in sync. He looks at you, smiling faintly. "It's strange," he says. "Everything outside this house runs on lightning. But I still trust this more." You nod. "So do I." You both sit back down. The silence that follows is soft and full. Outside, wind moves through the trees, whispering over the roof. The moon climbs higher, pale and indifferent. Inside, the candles burn lower, each droplet of wax a small surrender to gravity. The mother trims one wick with scissors and sets the trimmings aside, a ritual that would be familiar to anyone across history. And then the daughter, no older than 10, looks up from her bowl. "Why do we use candles when we have lights?" she asks. Her father smiles gently. "Because," he says, "light is what we see with, but candles are what we feel with." The girl nods thoughtfully, watching the flame as if trying to memorize it. You realize she will. Even if she grows up in a world of smart bulbs and holograms, somewhere in her memory will live this moment. The scent of wax, the hum of the wind, the comfort of gold against dark. You step outside after dinner, the air cool and still. Through the window, you can see the family laughing, shadows moving across the walls like old ghosts finally at rest. The candle flames reflect in the glass, 2 small suns burning quietly in a universe of dark. You pick up your own candle, the one that's followed you since the beginning of this journey. It's worn now, edges uneven, wick short. You strike a match. The flame leaps, wavers, steadies. You hold it close, feeling its warmth touch your skin. This light has watched humanity crawl from caves to skyscrapers. It's seen empires rise and fall, machines take over the night, and still, it remains. Not as power, not as wealth, but as memory. You whisper to it. You've outlasted gold and guns and kings. It flickers once, as if pleased, and in that soft glow, you understand. Candles were never truly valuable because of what they did. They were valuable because of what they meant. They gave more than light. They gave permission to hope, to see, to rest, to remember. You set the candle down on a rock. The wind brushes past, cool and curious. The flame bends, bows, but doesn't break. And for the first time, you don't fear the dark at all. The flame burns lower now, its rhythm slower, calmer. The room, your mind, seems to follow. The air grows soft, heavy with the scent of wax and the sound of your own breath. You've been chasing light across millennia, but now it feels like it's chasing you, gently, patiently, wrapping you in warmth. You lean back. The night presses close, but it's not the enemy it once was. It's softer now, a companion. Outside your window, the world hums with the steady glow of electricity. But here, in this small circle of gold, everything feels slower, truer. The candle crackles once, a tiny sigh. Shadows stretch lazily across the walls, moving like ripples on water. You remember the monks, the sailors, the workers, the lovers, all those hands that kept the flame alive so you could have this moment. The thought feels comforting, like being part of a long, unbroken chain. You take a slow breath in. The wax glows translucent, the wick bends, and the flame softens into a whisper. It's saying what it's always said. You are safe. You are seen. You are here. Your eyes grow heavy. The last of the wax pools, glimmering like liquid gold. You let the image linger behind your eyelids. A tiny sun, steadfast and kind. And when you finally blow it out, the darkness that follows doesn't feel empty. It feels full, full of memory, of history, of quiet human grace. The smoke rises, curls, fades. The night listens. Sweet dreams.